Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, feminist and literary perspective. I'm your host Joel, and joining me as always is your insoluble host, Brian. Brian, welcome to the show, how are you?
Thanks, hi.
This week we're talking about Season 3, Episode 6, Banned Candy. And Brian, as we always do on Buffy Boys, will you please kick us off with the Buffy Ann summary of this episode?
Oh, we sure do always do that, yeah. So this episode it was Season 3, Episode 6. It was written by Jane Espenson and directed by Michael Lang, who also directed Surprise previously, so we would have talked about him then. It was first aired November 10th, 1998. I'll get into Jane Espenson in a second. I have a big... it's Jane Espenson. She's huge in Buffy. So I'll get into her after the Buffy Ann summary. To create a diversion while babies are fed to a demon he has debts to, the mayor has hire Ethan to sell candy bars that revert all adults to their teens. Joyce and Giles make love, though Buffy thinks she has intervened in time. With help from a punk Giles and briefly a nerd Snyder, Buffy captures Rayne, saves the babies, and kills the demon. That was actually pretty good.
The first part was very difficult to parse. It's like, which of these is a proper noun? But, you know, which of these is a person? Which of these is a thing? Which of these is a demon? Yeah.
Yeah. Though I wonder, okay, I think that basically... Okay, so today, I was thinking about how much the Google Home has been terrifying me recently, because we got a couple of Google Homes because we got some fancy lights and stuff. So
now, if people don't know what Google Home is, Brian, what's the elevator pitch for it there?
It's Amazon Alexa, except Google. So
okay,
but it's basically a voice-activated companion.
Is it weird that they've dehumanized it by just calling it the home as opposed to giving it a name?
I prefer not having to say Alexa, yeah, because that's weird. But it's really highlighted for me the fact that basically, I'd say 90% of the time when I say something to her, she does not have a fucking clue what I'm saying. She's just like, oh, no, sorry. So, and then like Joel very pompously immediately says what I have said, and then except with clarity, and he's like, there you go, Brian.
I enunciate.
And this has highlighted to me that I almost certainly do have a speech impediment to some degree. And I was reading about cluttering today, which is one of the speech impediments that people kind of have, where you end up putting all of your sounds towards the back end of a sentence, and your, mouth can't, or your brain kind of like, your mouth kind of catches up with your brain too quickly, essentially.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, I definitely have that.
You can't do anything about
it? Fuck no. But also, the Buffy Ann summaries, I reckon that when I'm reading them, that like, it drives my brain fucking wild. I find it so hard to read things off a page.
It's a confusing thing to have to kind of run through the L processor, that particular thing. I will actually, I've decided at some point later in this episode, I am going to quote from that Untitled Goose poem.
Oh, beautiful!
Because I just think it's really of the time and really relevant to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So I'm just saying we have a podcast where two people have some form of a speech impediment or speech. What was the word they used in that article you sent me? Dysfunction. It wasn't dysfunctional, but it was.
I can't remember.
Dislocation or something. It was an interesting word, but it's like it's not necessarily a condition, but it's just an interruption in your kind of your mental processing of the language centers. And I have, of course, my trademark sibilant S, and my years of what people in the private school I went to used to call elocution lessons, was an actual thing. That's what people said.
Wow.
I guess it's called speech and language therapy.
So Jane Espenson, okay?
Yes.
You may know her. I know her best because she did an episode of Gilmore Guys, which is actually a really good podcast about Gilmore Girls. Very similar in format to this. In fact, we stole most of what we do from them. But
did you say Gilmore Guys?
I did say Gilmore Guys, I think. But yeah, so Jane Espenson. First off, this is the first episode she writes for Buffy. She ends up writing about 23, I want to say. Notable episodes she's written would include Conversations with Dead People in season 7, which I think is the only episode without Xander. But she actually won a Hugo Award for that episode, which is really cool. Everything she's done, it's a mad amount of stuff. She comes from Ames, Iowa, which is a place. AMES, maybe Amy's? Who knows?
Ames.
So she found out when she was a teenager that MASH, the TV show, accepted spec scripts. So she went about writing one, and apparently it was awful and she never submitted it. But then she started submitting spec scripts to TNG. which they also did. So if you don't know what spec scripts are, it's basically TNG or Next Generation
Of Star Trek.
accept submissions from the public writing wise. So they don't require you to have like a Screen Actors Guild membership.
Put it in a packet envelope, send it to the producers at Star Trek,
and they will read it and they will say yes or no, basically. So starting that, and she did actually end up writing for Star Trek at one point. She wrote for DS9. So her major credits include she was a major person on the writing team for Battlestar Galactica and Caprica, which was the follow-up TV show that was less popular, let's just say. She wrote the episode A Golden Crown for Game of Thrones, which was the one where they... Rhaegar Targaryen?
No, Viserys.
Viserys Targaryen, yeah, I believe that.
Who is... you know, he's in Legion. He's in an episode of Doctor Who.
Yeah,
you know, he's that guy. But he's Danny's brother in the first season, essentially.
Exactly, when he gets the gold melted and poured on his head, basically.
Yeah.
She wrote for Torchwood for season 4 onwards. So in terms for Buffy, her Buffy pedigree, she comes in here. She's an executive story. I think she's an executive story supervisor at this point.
Okay.
But in season 4, she becomes a co-producer. She becomes a producer in season 5, a supervising producer in season 6, and the co-executive producer of season 7. So that's pretty big by that point.
It all sounds great.
Yeah, I have no idea what it means. She wrote a lot of Buffy comics. Yeah, various writing credits, like lesser, so she would have written 1 or 2 episodes of these things. Would have been Firefly, Angel, Dollhouse, Jessica Jones, and she also wrote 2 episodes for season 4 of Gilmore Girls, so that's why she was on that show. And most interestingly, she is the executive producer for the upcoming TV show by Joss Whedon, The Nevers, which is quite exciting. So
yeah, which is his newest entry into the potentially into the Whedonverse.
That's everything I have to say about that.
Yeah, but I would definitely feel that Joss Whedon, Jane Espenson, Margie Noxon kind of really defining voices for this show, and definitely
they're definitely the triumvirate. Yeah.
Yes, and I would recognize specifically definitely Jane Espenson from all those properties. Like when she comes up, it's like I know that's an episode that she's done. Yeah, so it's you know, and it all starts here. In respect to Buffy. So yeah, that's cool.
It's the heavens are coming down in Dublin today. There's a major storm coming towards us, and it may not be a hurricane when it gets to us, but it's going to be pretty stormy for the rest of the week, and it just means that we have quite a lot of rain noise around the apartment, which is really nice for us, but maybe not great for podcast noise.
It's atmospheric. Irish people get so excited when we have real weather because it's always just kind of muggy.
Yeah.
But all the headlines were, you know, Met Éireann, which is like our weather bureau, are quite worried about the hurricane. But it's like, but everyone's like,
is it Hurricane Lorenzo? Is that not
Hurricane Lorenzo? Yeah. But everyone's like, ooh, apparently it's meant to be bad, you know, which is just such like I don't know, geographically privileged behavior.
Oh yeah.
And we're completely not set up for it. Like it was, it's chaos reigns out there at the moment. Like people are throwing children under trams and things to try and get on board. It was absolutely crazy. And we're sitting up here on the 4th floor.
It's like 6 floors up. Weirdly, though, it is the 4th floor.
It's a weirdly built building, so we're essentially 6 floors up. And what I always think about in these situations is there's a really bad like 6th sequel to Day of the Dead in the Of the Dead series, where basically all the living people live in a big tower and everyone on the ground is zombies. I'm like, oh yeah. Metaphor is kind of on the nose there.
Yeah.
So will we go ahead with our planned topic for our bronze banter segment, or have we used up our allotted
oh please, let's go. Let's do it quick because it's an unimportant topic.
So what we were chatting to each other about, because I enjoyed it and Brian enjoyed it, was a post that has come up, resurfaced on Twitter, which in the words of the post's subjects is the Giles was nice to a trans guy story. And yeah, the long and the short,
it's been floating around online for a couple of years now.
It's floating around for a couple of years, but it's kind of, you know, it's hit the updraft of social media again. But essentially, kind of in his own words, this guy Jay Hume, who I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Hulme.
Holm, I would have said.
Holm. Jay Holm is a poet who, when he was younger and recently come out as trans, was invited, you know, obviously context being like a big Buffy fan, because who isn't? So in 2015 was invited by Anthony Stewart Head to meet his wife and go to his farm and spent the day with him. And
it was under the premise that he had a bunch of Buffy memorabilia, and it was all signed to his birth name.
Yeah.
And he essentially didn't, like, he got in touch with Anthony and said, listen, would you be able to sign these again for me, because they mean a lot to me, but I'd love if I could have them in my real name.
Yeah.
So.
And I think one of the most shocking aspects of this story for people that always takes them by surprise is that Anthony Stewart Head does tend to go by Tony.
Yeah.
So but I feel weird about that, because I won't be saying that. But and that's a lovely story, and there's a lovely context about kind of, just Anthony Stewart Head and his wife, like, not doing anything heroic, but just being decent people and being, engaged on a human level, etc. But I think what really kind of elevated it for us, and we're like, oh, okay, that's kind of very relevant to, like, what we're trying to extract from, without being too goddamn artificial about it, but from the kind of the themes of Buffy and why it's valuable, is it's not just the surface details of, oh, that's a nice story, but I actually now follow Jay Hum on Twitter, so I've been reading this thread extensively. It's actually quite a good poet. I would actually recommend it. But he highlights that one of the most valuable things for it was that it was an opportunity for him to interact with someone with Anthony Stewart Head and his wife, who modeled kindness and demonstrated to them what was maybe a moderate or a small act of kindness, of decency, of empathy, at a pivotal moment in Jay's life that he could then model himself on. And up until that point, as he says, he hadn't really had exposure to any kindness, and where he came from, it wasn't something that was prized, and seeing that was a way to operate in the world where you could thrive while still being a kind and considerate and engaged person, was a small but incredibly valuable lesson, which shaped him as a man. And one detail which I had forgotten, which I picked up, is that he took Anthony as his middle name. He changed his name, which is really nice. And he's kind of gone on, as he says, that he's thrived, he's done TED Talks, he's written books. Anthony Stewart Head wrote the foreword to his first self-published book of poems, and it's just, it's good shit.
Yeah, that is the good shit.
That is, it's the other side of the coin of when you have to try to continue to enjoy certain properties, even when the people involved in them turn out to be maybe not very nice people. When you find out that, like, that the values that Giles has and the values that Anthony Stewart Head has overlap. Yeah, it's just quite nice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's lovely. I mean, like, I think just because of when Buffy came along in my life, if I found out that Giles was actually, like, the Giles actor, that's Anthony Stewart Head, was actually just a bad person, homophobic or transphobic, it would actually, like, it would hurt, Yeah. I would be so upset.
And the funny thing is, like, because this has become such a, in some ways it's good to be aware of these things, and more people are becoming cognizant of people's views, where in years past maybe they would have overlooked them, and that's valuable under the certain realism to that. And you gird yourself against that, and you say, look, you become more ready for it and leathered for it over the years, and particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, I think. But there are certain people who it will hurt. Yeah. For me, I always say Bruce Campbell is one.
Yeah, that's fair.
We take a deep dive of, like, trying to find out if he was a Republican at one point, when at a time 2 or 3 years ago where that was a very salient and stressful point for me. But yeah, there's some people who you just want to, because they are formative.
Yeah, they are.
And obviously not to the acute degree, I guess, for Jay here in this story, but, like, definitely formative, and give you a piece of your worldview that you refer back to.
To be really, really, like, sappy about it, it's kind of just nice knowing that the people who are, like, you're watching on TV and you kind of look up to and really, gave you a lot of, like, in some way support when you were younger, or you saw them as being, like, not a role model, because I wouldn't have seen any of the actors in Buffy as a role model, but I would have seen them as such comfort figures, knowing that they actually, like, like people like us. It just means so much. Especially, I mean, like, when I was younger, celebrities weren't openly gay friendly, as in, like, celebrities weren't they didn't, like, make it clear that they were pro LGBT rights in any way. In fact, they would usually do the opposite. And yeah, like, so when you found someone who was good, it was so, like, it was such a nice, weird, warm hug from across the Atlantic usually. So
Yeah, and that's why when you do find the people, I'm sure you have better examples, but if you find the people were actively involved in this kind of activism in the early 90s, the 80s, any earlier than that, like that's an incredibly significant move where, to be honest, to be frank, it's easier to do it now.
Yeah.
So it's easier for people to do it with no repercussions.
We're going way long on our introduction, but the person who I always think about with that is Liz Taylor. Mm-hmm. Liz Taylor was like an active AIDS activist, or hugely active AIDS activist. There's a story floating around online that she used to like smuggle easy tea for people, and like used to find ways to distribute it.
Yeah, which is a crucial AIDS medicine.
Yeah, and it was very, very difficult to come across in the mid 80s. Because of her friend Rock Hudson, who died of AIDS in the 80s. He was a famous actor, obviously, but no, she was out and proud in her support of her gay fans and the gay community, and actively did something about it. And just like that kind of thing, that makes a difference. It's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's go patrol them, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Band Candy, the one where Giles and Joyce have sex.
It's so good.
Yeah. So as you discussed, again, spoilerific Buffy and summaries. The mayor wants to give tribute to Demon Lurkonis and to engage with Mr. Trick to engage Ethan Rayne in a bizarre example of subcontracting and capitalism, to distribute Band Candy, which turns all the adults back to their teenage personalities, all of which are apparently incredibly irresponsible and destructive.
Yeah.
There's no nerds in this group. Yeah.
There is a suggestion there by Willow that like it's a disturbed second teenagehood.
Sure, yeah,
so it's the idea that maybe that they're not just turned back into teenagers, they're turned back into like specifically irresponsible teenagers, maybe.
Yeah, so kind of like a pastiche of it, because there's also like there's an element of, because we see the most significant ones being that Joyce is reverted to her notably a kind of like uncool teenage personality, because like she's she becomes a bit of a groupie, but also she mentions when she was a teenager she was on the yearbook committee, so she's not like, she's not a Cordelia Chase, she's not a Willow, but she's not a Cordelia Chase, and Giles demonstrates and performs his Ripper personality, which what I love is that obviously it leads to like a dark place for him, but he's also just kind of a wanker as well.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that's also very much taken. I've talked before about how this is modeled on the John Constantine personality from Hellblazer, but like it's not like a dark and brooding angel kind of thing. It is just like a kind of destructive wanker from England, who also causes a lot of trouble. So
it's also, I mean, like in this episode, you get the there's a very clear visual Clockwork Orange reference there. So when Giles and Joyce are smashing in a window to get Joyce a feathery jacket for herself, Giles puts on a hat. It's a bowler hat, and he's walking around and he's doing the hoppy skippy and stuff, and it's definitely a Clockwork Orange reference. So out of like crazy English teenagers going wild is the Clockwork Orange theme. There's a
lot of visual references in it. It's Clockwork Orange. I think a lot of how he portrays himself is kind of Marlon Brando kind of thing.
Oh, Marlon Brando's a good shout there, or James Dean
kind of
where the wild things are.
That's not right.
The wild ones.
The wild ones, or not many visual references to where the wild things are in this episode. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a funny episode.
Yeah.
It's not the deepest episode in terms of themes or criticism, but it is the one where for the entire episode, Giles and Joyce just get to act like teenagers and tell Buffy to go screw herself and get off their back, and etc. etc.
And Anthony Stewart Head and Christine Sutherland are incredible in it. But let's be real. The true like MVP acting wise of this episode has to be Armin Shimmerman, right?
Yeah. So our Principal Schneider, who like really the first episode he's in where he's featured significantly as opposed to just like a foil, and Armin Shimmerman is a good actor.
Yeah,
he's a good actor, and he
even his like facial contortions in this episode versus how he holds himself usually.
Yeah, like
it was just like he had this like manic smile and just like loads of expression in his eyes, where he's usually incredibly like sluggish in his movements.
Yeah.
It was real, like it was a beautiful like contrast. It was really well done.
He tells a character through physicality, and like Armin Shimmerman had to perform a complex character to some degree on DS9 for 7 years under heavy makeup, ridiculous makeup. So I actually think that's a real skill. But he comes through. I love because like we never, as I mentioned before, we never discover what Principal Snyder's first name is.
Yeah.
So there's a joke where everyone's obviously calling each other by more childish names, and he's like, just call me Snyder. It's just like a single name kind of thing. It's cool, etc.
Yeah, and he makes a reference to a 70s sitcom that I don't really know, but it's about a teacher in the 70s. He's like a cool, inspiring teacher. If I remember correctly, I should have chased it up, but I didn't, because it was something that I was like, you know what, I don't care. Yeah,
but it's like such a it's a great episode for just an adventure, because papers over why they call him Snyder still, papers over why he goes with the Scoobies to investigate things, and really it's just because it is funny to do so.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say it's hard to tell who would have had more fun doing this episode, the younger actors or the older actors. I have to imagine it's the older actors. I'd say they had such fun.
This is the Anthony Stewart head that was in Rocky Horror Picture Show. Do you know what I mean? Like, cause the energy is just part of it.
And there's a Rocky Horror reference in this. Anthony Stewart Head was in Rocky Horror Picture Show in 1990 to 91 on the West End, and he played Frankenfurter. Which, I mean, if you look up the photos, it's hot.
So, yeah.
At one point when they're in the bronze and it's full of adults, Buffy and Willow are there. Buffy says it's very let's do the time warp in here. So I mean, I think that's suggesting like they've time warped, because obviously they're all old, etc. But also it's like it's very old people, because like that's an old people movie basically.
Yeah, and I find it fascinating because like because Rocky Horror has been such an enduring cult hit, and because it's had a revival and it's very popular still, it doesn't feel like an artifact of an old time.
Yeah.
But every other reference they make in this, it really places it that their childhood was 20 years before we were born. Yeah. You and I. Yeah. Because like they make references to like
the real world.
Buffy makes a reference to that as a present
thing. Sorry.
But like Joyce talks about things like bands I don't even know, but I know Cream is like an older band from this time.
Yeah, well, Cream would have been in the 60s, late 70s, yeah.
Yeah, so something maybe you were listening to when she was a teenager, or even referencing saying he looks like Burt Reynolds.
Because like Burt Reynolds at this point in time was like, it would have been the same year that Boogie Nights came out. So do you remember what he looked like in Boogie Nights?
I do.
Like just an old man.
Yeah. So I enjoy that a lot. My understanding is that Christine Sutherland likes this for obvious reasons. It's one of her favorite episodes because it was one of fun to do. Yeah. And you actually saw a very unfavorable review of Miss Sutherland's acting.
Should I get it up here because it was actually so funny. Okay, I'll read this out and you can like. Okay, this is an online person. Exactly. It's a 1-star review from the 9th of February 2017 on IMDb for this episode. And the title is, "Any episode with Joyce Summer is extremely hard to watch. I'm not sure that the actor portraying Joyce had much of a chance the way she was written, but she didn't help the character with the lack of heart she put into her effort. Extremely cliche, out of touch with the youth adult, was somehow considered cutting edge at the end of the 90s apparently." It's just full of brilliant. This installment practically is a satire of the overly protective, ignorant to reality, the reality of Buffy, that is, nature of Joyce Summers. The writers should have realised how awful the regular character is when the satire was among the character's best received moments on the show. It's just like, and then okay, I'm a beyond middle-aged geek who has watched most every genre show, but managed to somehow never watch Buffy until now. I enjoyed Charmed and Angel, having watched them both when they were morning fare on TNT. There have been moments through seasons 1 and 2 that I've enjoyed Buffy, but as season 3 is progressing and is turning more into a love to hate it watch, I'm determined to finish it, but it's not going to be easy at this rate. It's like,
thanks for your hot take in 2017, Dave. Do you know?
I mean, like, imagine like sitting down as like, he's like more than middle age, so 48-year-old man or something, and being like, this teenager's TV show, it's shit. I much prefer Charmed.
Old man shakes fist at cloud.
Sorry, that was so much like reading of text.
Very good. So it's a very high school episode. Yep. It's a lot of fun. We start off with, there's a lot of misdirection and kind of classic comedy tropes. We start off with
setting up plenty of dramatic irony, which we love.
Definitely. We have them in the graveyard initially dealing with difficult life problems, and it turns out that Giles is just helping her to study for her SATs while they're staking. she's like fully ensconced under a blanket, sitting in the graveyard while she's reading, and then kills a vamp with a number 2 pencil. Ticonderoga number 2 pencil.
Oh, beautiful.
Which is, I know, because it's a very significant feature in the producers, but also it's just apparently the pencil you're meant to use in
the SATs.
American schools.
Oh, okay.
And SATs, etc. And I think I read somewhere it was because someone had a friend who had a contract, and that was like, became like the pencil. Because,
holy shit! Wow.
Yeah, some way old time back when. Yeah.
Mad.
There's a bit I really enjoy where Buffy is talking about how she had a dream that a SAT question was following her around, a multiple choice question, and Willow asked, "Do you think it was a prophecy dream?" Probably not. Which would have seemed ridiculous at the time, but we're a couple of seasons away from the cheese man. The
cheese man, which there's a reference to someone on the writing staff of Buffy. It does like Death of a Salesman, because in this episode Buffy's like saying that she doesn't want to have to go Willy Loman with the band candy and go selling it like door to door kind of thing. Willy Loman being the main character of Death of a Salesman, and in Restless in season 4, which is the cheese man episode, they put on a production of Death of a Salesman, and Riley's wearing a cowboy outfit for some reason
because he thinks he's in Oklahoma.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so someone on the writing staff has a thing for Death of a Salesman.
There's a reference in the Sunnydale High yearbook, which is one of the merchandise coming out of the show, that the band candy sale makes $600,000 for the band.
What's funny is that like they start off selling the candy, and then by the end of the episode they're giving it away, and it's like, wait, if you're trying to get everyone hooked on this and stay in a youthful state, would you not just give it away from the start?
Was he
plot hole? This show is shit.
Unravel it, cancelled. My feeling is that it would be too suspicious, and you wouldn't get a wide enough distribution if you start giving out free candy.
Okay, yeah, sure.
But I'm an apologist. It has a very the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie vibe to it.
Oh yeah,
which is a similar plot about Alice getting drinking fucking like purple gooey Tipex, but anyway,
drinking purple slurm.
So actually, this is a recurring like trope. So there's this, and they go wild and they start partying. There's Hocus Pocus, the Bette Midler Halloween vehicle, which is the
dance until you die,
which is the most shown film ever on our national broadcasting.
Yes, this is a fact. The most shown movie on Irish TV of all time is Hocus Pocus. It airs at least once a year on our national broadcaster, and it's like a fact on the Wikipedia page. It's like the most shown movie of all time in Ireland is Hocus Pocus. And like, good. Hocus Pocus is wonderful.
The Agos go crazy in that as well, and
they do,
also ignore the teenagers. It also was for a very long time the most shown. That song was the most shown YouTube clip in my house.
Oh yeah,
because my younger sister took a great liking to it and played it quite a number of times. But it's a jam. Like, it's a jam with Bette Midler. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, very good.
So yeah, it's great. It's notably says this. I will not attempt to tell you where the accent is from, but Anthony Stewart Head uses his natural accent as opposed to the more received pronunciation he uses for Giles. To portray Ripper. I want to say north.
Kind of north, northy. Yeah.
That's a wild generalization.
It just sounds a little bit more working class in his accents. That's why I'm thinking it's probably north. But that's a huge stereotype.
No, absolutely. But that's why, like, that is definitely the kind
understood,
of characteristics, the understood thing he's trying to portray. Yeah. And I also draw that because I'm assuming that it's kind of a Constantine parallel, who's also from the north of England. But yeah, it's kind of very endearing. You see a lot of not to be too obvious about it, but a lot of Anthony Stewart Head's range in this.
Yeah.
He's very smiley. He has a lot of nuance to what could be like a really one-note satirical character. So I enjoy it a lot. And yeah, obviously we have big themes of, there's a lot of focus on maturity, Buffy having to start thinking about the SATs, what she's going to do in college, her mom not letting her drive, and her having to take responsibility for her parents, and kind of echoing a lot of those parent-child conversations, which is why in this episode, far more than any episode previously, you have Giles and Joyce clearly performing the mother and father role before they turn, literally standing beside each other when she comes home, like saying, we were very worried about you.
Yep. So this episode definitely does flirt with a very specific traditional family structure. So like, specifically the kind of the nuclear family. Actually, Joe, funny that you should mention that, because I was reading an essay about that, which is Darkness Falls in the Endless Summer. Summer being Buffy Summers. Anyway, so it was written by Catherine Seaman and Catherine Simon, Siemann. I think it's probably Seaman. Catherine's just talking generally about Giles as further introduction as a father figure. Joyce Summers acknowledges it first in the third season's premiere episode Anne, when she tells Giles that she blames not herself but him for the crisis that has led Buffy to run away from home. Buffy resists the typical television outcome. Under the influence of a magic spell, Giles and Joyce have a fling in band candy, but it is never repeated because repairing them romantically would neatly recreate the nuclear family in Buffy's life. When the nature of Giles' fatherly feelings towards Buffy is acknowledged, however, he loses his power. At the end of the third season's Helpless, he is relieved of his duties as Watcher because he has developed a father's love for his charge and can no longer exercise the necessary objectivity. And then basically says that in season 4 you see Giles experience an empty nest kind of thing in his paternal role. So yeah, just talking about how this episode is one of the steps along the way in terms of Giles's movement through the fathering world for Buffy and the father figure role.
And they incorporate various kind of classic teenage tropes into that, because you have the round robin of Buffy saying that she is with Joyce and telling Joyce she's with Giles, and Willow also not knowing where she is. Again, the kind of sad thing, the kind of semi-tragic thing about Buffy is they all think she's off partying, having fun in the Bronze, and she's actually trying to nurse Angel back to health. Yeah,
so that's one of the questions here. I mean, so maturity is one of the top themes of this season. So you have Buffy starting off the season totally alone and trying to fend for herself. And you kind of have to see her as learning to be on her own. This episode shows her that she doesn't need the adults around her. She can take control, and she can be, she can take care of herself and the people around her. But that's a major mark of maturity, is that she's telling a white lie. She's not doing it for selfish reasons. She's not just disappearing. She is being responsible in her actions here, in that she can't tell people about Angel, both because she isn't sure how she feels about herself, and also from what she knows, and this needs to be reiterated again and again, people, the last thing she heard about what everyone thought about Angel is that, go kick his ass.
Yeah.
So she has to hide Angel. She thinks that they might want her to kill him if they know about it.
Yeah, how shades of kind of Frankenstein's monster, in the sense of,
oh yeah, good shit.
He's very much kind of being hidden somewhere in a barn or away from civilization, and there is the feeling that they found out that he was there, that they wouldn't understand his tortured humanity, and they would actually just get the pitchforks and the flaming sticks, which I can't remember the name for. Torches.
Talk
about language breaking down.
Speaking of Angel, it's so sad that he went to the hell dimension and forgot how to wear clothes.
Yeah,
what's happening there?
They just
fall right off.
The shirt is a symbol of Christ, or I don't know.
His sweat represents God's tears.
He's doing
because he created a man too beautiful to live.
He's doing Tai Chi, but I think that's also a weirdly tropic thing of show our misunderstood, powerful, semi-human, semi-supernatural hero kind of doing Tai Chi to center his incredibly powerful muscles with his soul.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe Angel started that.
Maybe.
Oh. But look, we're not complaining, are we, Brian?
I'm not complaining. So one of the odd things that I kind of thought was interesting about this episode is that this episode really heavily plays with that kind of Manichaeanism that we talked a lot about in season 2. So the kind of good and evil inversions, etc. But at the same time, it does kind of look at the complexities thereof in this episode. So in the same way that when vampires are when people are vamped, they become perverted inversions of their own previous character. Caring, lovely Willow becomes a vicious, sex-driven torturer, or incapable but lighthearted Liam becomes a sadistic and effective killer. So in this episode, you have very motherly, very warm, caring, and responsible Joyce becoming a kind of silly flower girl.
Yeah. And very grounded Joyce becomes kind of a very
airy character. Yeah. And Giles, who is the emotional rock of the show, becomes violent and outbursting. And then Snyder, of course, goes from being this menacing character to like, you know, that kind of like that dweeb. And I was wondering, Kate, do you think it is like a reversal, or is it just like trying to show that like these characters have matured into what they become? Are we seeing them as youths, or are we seeing exaggerated forms of them as youths, or are we seeing an inversion?
I think it's a weird fusion happening, because if you take Giles as an example, he has obviously huge elements of his Ripper, his 16-year-old personality specifically. He has some of his memory. He's a lot of his memories and his knowledge of being a Watcher, which he can kind of access, and is very aware of his relationship with Buffy. But I also think a certain element of inebriation to it, and the removal of inhibition, because realistically, the level and consistency to which you're irresponsible is supernaturally maintained. You know, at a certain point you'd be like, oh, well, what's happening to me, kind of thing, even if you are 16. But I do think it is meant to show maturity. I think the signpost of that is Oz, who is newer to the Scooby Gang. You know, says, what's the problem if Giles is 16? He was always kind of stuffy Giles. And they're like, everyone's like, no, well, we know he actually was quite troubled and quite difficult as a teenager. And what I think is interesting is that it's actually one of the weirdly humanizing moments for a couple of reasons for Snyder. Because not only is he kind of a pathetic figure here, and clearly is written as someone who has kind of withered into this very bitter person over a lifetime of being like this. Maybe this is a harsh thing to say, but someone like a Jonathan, you know, who kind of maintains that trajectory. But you also get the sense that even though he's really unempathetic about what happens in Sunnydale, he kind of doesn't know what's going on with the mayor as much as was previously portrayed. Like, he wants to be in with that, but he is a little clueless as to the scale of what's happening. So he's a bit of a patsy himself in it, you know. But I think it's definitely about showing that how we can be many different people in our lives through maturing. And I think from Buffy's perspective, she has a certain limited view of maturity, because she has this built-in kind of death date. Really, you know, she doesn't really have that longitudinal sense of, you know, like college and driving and who I'm going to be when I'm 40. You know, they're kind of difficult things for her to process or care about, even though everyone expects her to act as if she's not likely to die, which I think is why putting one half of her responsibilities in the home and one half being the Slayer so textually is kind of examining that. Like, the rules for her in some ways emotionally are different. And I think there's a weird poignancy to that, while being a very funny episode, is that, you know, I always think looking this like she might not get to look back on when she's 16, so she's kind of having to be mature now to a certain degree. That's sad. That makes me sad. Yeah, but it's also funny, and Giles and Joyce do have sex twice apparently. Yeah.
Disgusting. The ending shot where Joyce and Giles are like, right, cool, ignoring the fact that they have slept together, and then immediately just like
pivot on a dime
and like run away. It was actually very beautiful.
What I enjoy this episode as well is Corgie's very light. Like, she's not acerbic, and she's not running away or screaming or anything. She's just like in a kind of good mood, and she talks a lot about how she's actually quite good at standardized tasks, and she's like, so what, I can have theirs. And she's just along having fun in the episode, because she's no storyline or anything to do. And there's a weird propensity, because they want to show that everyone is like all these old people, elderly. A lot of ageism in this episode, realistically. Elderly, decrepit, useless people is the tone, and now they're like trying to be cool again. It's disgusting. It makes me vomit, etc. So they show basically like it's like the entire retirement community in Sunnydale has emptied into the bronze, because they're all like male dentists, it's 70 plus, taking their shirts off. Like I've never seen so many older people in one scene or in the entire length of the show, do you know? So it's kind of an odd one. I think it's like a weird lesbian moment between Cordelia and her elderly study hall teacher.
What?
It's a specific thing, because there's a joke. So
please explain.
Yeah, I will. So Giles doesn't turn up for study hall, and it's been replaced by Mrs. something or other. I didn't catch her name. But she's typically meant to be an old fuddy-duddy, you know? And she says, instead, let's just all take out a book and pretend we're reading until old Commandant Snyder is gone, and then we're out of here. And then Xander's like, does anyone else want to feel like marrying Mrs. whatever her face is? And the camera cuts to Cordelia, and she says, "Gegan lying," but really really put some oomph into it. Yeah, it's a weird moment.
That's so weird.
Yeah,
what the fuck?
As it's just a log of like unconnected, and in a great way, but like just unconnected comedy moments, comedy beaks in this. Like for example, like the mayor when they're down in the sewers about to sacrifice 4 babies to Lurkonis.
Was it not 5?
No, it was 4.
Oh, okay,
I believe it was 4. So that, yeah, Lurkonis is the snake demon that he's paying tribute to, and that's kind of the I keep saying impetus. Is impetus right in this context? Motivation?
Impetus is fine, yeah.
Yeah. The impetus for the episode, the imperative. And the snake is relatively well done.
It's pretty well done, yeah. It looks a little like something out of like Jim Henson's studio. So it looks a little bit like the worm from Fraggle Rock.
Yeah.
But anyway, go on.
One question I have is, why are snake demons specifically something the show returns to? Why not spider demons? They're bear demons.
Penises, I think.
Well, maybe, but you usually go for it's not a usual well to draw from. But anyway, the mayor drops a line about showing that he's still the mayor of a small municipal town while this is happening, calling up his secretary, whose name I want to say is Karen.
It is Karen, yeah. And
saying, I need to get on the phone to Jim tomorrow because I'm seeing a lot of ventilation issues here in the sewers. I'm seeing some exposed gas works. It's a trap, etc. So like we need to sort that out. Cancel my 3 o'clock. And then when Buffy arrives, she pulls down one of those gas mains and uses it to burn the the snake, which is very good.
It's Chekhov's gas pipeline.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is the first time technically that the mayor and Buffy meet. Now I know he slips.
I don't think she spots him.
No, I know he slips away, but they're like 7 feet away from each other, and then he just goes around a corner.
Yeah. We should probably wrap up our main storyline there, or our patrolling.
Our patrolling, yeah. Well, it's as Buffy said, it's a Slay Stuggy double feature, so we need to serve 2 masters, as it were. Okay, so do you mind if I throw a couple of Buffy bits your way? Hit me. So you may have noticed Xander has Cordelia's homecoming flyer in his locker, which I thought was kind of nice. Yeah, while he's cheating on her. Yeah. Angel does do taekwondo. No, he doesn't. Tai Chi. Sorry. Because... Snyder mentions that he does taekwondo. Sarah Michelle Gellar actually practices taekwondo. So there you go. Or did at the time. That's cool. Yeah. There's a really annoying point where 4 men try to sing Louie Louie by the Kingsmen on stage and do a really awful job of it. I just like this because the Kingsmen and Louie Louie is one of the most fascinating songs of all time, because it was in the 50s or the 60s. I can never remember. I think it was 50s. There's a line in it that goes like I'll make her go ooh, and I was like, basically people thought, oh wait, are they saying they're going to give a woman an orgasm? And the FBI opened an investigation into this fucking song. So there you go. It's one illegal orgasm. Apparently Jane Espenson plays a lunch lady in this episode, but I didn't spot her. Yeah, I'll go back and find her. And this is the first Faithless episode since she started the show. There's definitely an episode called that at some point somewhere. There has to be. Oh, there fucking has to be. Yeah. Do you have anything for us, Joe? Yeah, a couple of Buffy bits. Just a couple, and then I want to use some time at the end to talk about a goose. But I enjoyed just generally the awkwardness of Buffy talking about Scott, who has dumped her. So I enjoyed the awkwardness around Scott, and Angel asking her, is she being careful? And she's like, am I being careful with Scott? And he said, no, like slaying your slayer. And this her generally like getting herself in another web of lies, because she's not a good liar. And obviously I love Buffy's driving, because she's incredible. Arguing that she's mature, she can get behind the wheel of a car. She gets into it and she drives, skidding around the corner with her parking brake on, and just obviously went to the same driving instructor that Cordelia Chase has. Yeah, that's it. Otherwise I would just say, as I said before, I always appreciate an Ethan episode. He kind of in some ways doesn't get much of a look in this because so much else is going on, but like again Robin Sachs does a strong performance, I think, as Ethan, and I enjoy him. He only owns 1 shirt. He does only own 1 shirt. So do you want me to give you a death count for this episode? Yeah, hit me with that death. Oh, actually, we should do fashion in a minute, but yeah, death count. 3 vampires are dusted by Buffy. So there's one in the opening scene, there's one, and there are 2 that she does in the same like shot. Yeah, exactly. The factory guy killed by Mr. Trick to make an example of him. Yeah. There's the vampire eaten by Lurkonis. Lurkonis, is that what we call him? Yeah. And then Lurkonis gets burned with a gas pipe and a torch by Buffy. Yeah. It's worth noting as well, just briefly, that in the factory pre-Amazon packing scene, of the 10 workers on screen, I think 5 or 6 of them are African American, and that, as we've discussed, is nearly the entire sum of black actors that have been on the show previously. So
and it's in an industrial setting,
so
and it's you kind of get the sense there's maybe a bit of stereotyping going on there.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, fashion notes. So I fucking loved Giles' outfit in this episode, where when he's being Ripper, he's wearing a like really fuck off punk boots. He's wearing like torn jeans. He's wearing like a
shirt tied around his waist.
Yeah, a checked shirt tied around his waist, and then a tight white jumper with a pack of cigarettes under the arm.
T-shirt. Because specifically what I wrote was the undershirt has finally paid off. the plague of the American man on television wearing a T-shirt under your shirt is finally had its day. Yeah,
I really like the shirt that Angel's wearing in this episode, which is none. That was my favorite fashion note. Willow is wearing another fluffy jumper,
like a purple Snuggie.
Who fucking knows? And
just climbed inside of it.
I really like what Joyce wears until she puts on that really awful coat with all the feathers, because what she's wearing is just like a really like flowy dress that she's kind of opened and exposed underneath, like some kicking really high boots and like a skirt and just like a top, but like she just looks like a beautiful flower child.
Yeah. Also, Oz is wearing at one point a what I can only describe as a mariachi band shirt.
Yeah. Oz has some odd fashion choices, but I don't hate them.
No, because he does pull them off, in part because, as Snyder points out in this episode, he has great hair.
Okay. Do you have your rating ready for the episode, Joe?
I do. When would be good goose time?
We'll do the goose after the rating.
Okay. So yeah, my
what's good for the goose is good for the rating.
Go ahead and give me your rating there, Brian.
Okay, I'm going to give this episode 9 out of 10 geek machines out of 10. Wait, yeah, that's what I mean to say.
100%, 9 out of 10 geek machines out of 10. Tell me why.
It's loads of fun, not thematically too heavy, but it is one of the best funny Buffy episodes. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, so I think I'll agree with you on that. I'm going to say 9 out of 10 defiled police car bonks.
Beautiful.
I think, it's just the rung of the season that we're in. Band Candy is a lot of fun. It's and it just not everything has to be so serious. Not everybody being so critical about everything all the time, Brian. Sometimes it's just adults acting like teenagers. How goddamn wacky is that? Eh? Yeah. But no, I enjoyed it. I laughed out loud. Threw my head back and went, aha!
He did indeed.
Okay, so I think that's coming towards the end of the dusting for us. I just want to very briefly, kind of out of sequence, mention something that brings me great joy, and it's because you have discussed cluttering and language and all that kind of. I'm going to shoehorn it in. There is a game, the Untitled Goose game.
It's very wonderful.
It's very wonderful. You play a goose who harasses a town for reasons unknown except to the chaotic gods above, and it's very heartwarming and relatable in these uncertain times. But there is what I can only describe as a poem, an elegy, automatic writing by a writer who on Twitter is @DanielOrtberg, so I want to give kind of full credit to that, about the goose from a goose's perspective. And I will leave you with this. This is about a goose. I am the horrible creeping bag of sound that is the most worst to you. I will use my beak to mischief you, and I will press B. I wobble my snake front body and I waggle my bag back body, and they meet in the middle to plan a bad idea to upset you. I flap back and forth my business rear for balancing, and I snap up half my feet all up and down the town for terrible reasons, and you don't like it. I am the goose and you are the miserable boy with no honk. I invented my body and it was the best idea.
Wow.
It goes on from there. So ruminate on that one, Brian.
Okay, cool. So, go on. Bring us out today, Joe.
Okay, so I will say thank you for listening to this week's episode of Buffy Boys. We appreciate you. We don't say that often enough. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. I will recommend that you follow us on Twitter because we tweet and we talk and we retweet Buffy related things. You should tell your friends about it. You should tell your baby eating snake demons about it. And we will see you next time when we watch Revelations,
which is the Tarfreem episode. I'm very excited.
Tarfreem, which is the most Irish of episodes, the most Gael gory.
Yeah, well, except for the one where they included the big the Dublin bus.
Not. Oh yeah,
Dublin bus thing. But anyway, go
on. Okay, so thanks so much for listening. I have fun. Brian had fun. And we'll see you next time on Buffy
Boys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Cool. Nice. Great. Cool.